So thank you for that. Our next presenter is a long-time participant in these breakfasts. And it's been much too long since we've asked Ajax to speak. And Ajax is going to bring his talk, and he didn't bring any slides, so if you were here last month and heard Annette Kramer say that we don't need stinking slides, we should be able to do this and just talk about what we're going to do, well, Ajax is going to take that advice and he's going to deliver his presentation naked. All yours, Ajax. You know, not all the way, just almost all the way. There you go.
Good morning. I get to do two one-hour talks in about 15 minutes. So, and what was interesting about that is my horoscope said this morning that there was going to be room for miscommunication in my day. So I'll leave plenty of room for questions and answers at the end because I think I'll raise a lot of questions. So I hope you'll jot them down or remember them. So the two separate talks, very different actually. First, I'm going to be talking about the new B Corporation law that's been passed in New York. Let me give just a brief background. There were three fellows that were all roommates at Stanford. Two went on to found a company called AND1, which when they exited was doing about $350 million in revenue, selling basketball shoes and apparel. The other fellow went into private equity. They all had done exits. They came back together, years later and said, "Oh, we're in this great place. What do we want to do? We want to make a difference with the rest of their life." They founded a not-for-profit called B Lab. B Lab became the certifying organizations for B corporations, and I haven't defined B corporations yet, so give me a moment. So I was one of the first companies to be certified by B Lab. But now what they've done is they're going through state by state and passing new corporate laws, 7 states, Maryland, Vermont, Virginia, Hawaii, New Jersey, California, and New York, have all passed the B Corporation law. What is a B Corporation? It functions identically as either a B Corp or a S or a C Corporation. LLCs are a little bit different. LLCs are governed by contract law, not corporate law, so they're different. But this is focused on corporations. Now, why is this an issue? What's this all about? Well, if we use the Ben & Jerry's example, if you were to talk to Ben Cohen, even though he walked away with millions after they sold Ben & Jerry's to Unilever, he views it as a failure, that it was a forced sale based on shareholder lawsuits around maximizing profit. And so the concept of B corporations is that companies should have the legal right to undertake other missions other than solely focusing on shareholder return. And so the idea is B stands for benefit. So the idea is that you place equal emphasis on profit as well as social return or societal benefit, oftentimes referred to as community or environmental. Those tend to be sort of the more popular areas, although there's no requirement that it be those. But it needs to be a balanced approach, and you can actually, instead of being sued for not making enough money, you could actually be sued by shareholders for not doing a public benefit. And so a lot of the idea is that the long-term goal is that the B Corp logo would become for a corporation the way the Good Housekeeping seal of approval was for products. That's a long ways away. We're not there today. There's about just over 500 B Corps in the United States. On February 10th, there were 13 B Corps in the state of New York on the day that the law went into effect. In fact, my friend Maria here is a fellow B Corp, so you have 2 of the 13 in the room this morning. And the concept is that there's a lot of companies out there claiming that they do good things, but how real is that? There's no transparency around that. And so the difference is once you become, B Corp certified, and that's one of the things, even in the state of New York, you still need to, the state appoints a auditing agency so that you get audited potentially every 2 years, and so that the public can feel comfortable that they know that you are a good company and that you're not just using good marketing to kind of communicate something that you're not actually doing. So that, over time, we think this is going to become a very strong brand. Two things that I think are interesting about this, people say, well, what's the big deal? Right now, today, 80% of the Fortune 500 are issuing sustainability reports. So anyone who thinks big business isn't paying attention to this isn't paying attention, because they are. 80% of consumers, if given of 2 products side by side or of equal quality and equal price, but one is from a company that matches that consumer's values, that always will become the tiebreaker, and 80% of consumers will go that way. So this went from a 20 years ago small movement to becoming much, much more mainstream, and so the B Corp legislation I think helps that process along. Final point, and in the ceremony, Sheldon Silver, who is the Speaker of, I guess, the House in New York, was open to this suggestion, but that the idea, because B Corps are for benefit, in the city of Philadelphia, now Pennsylvania does not have a B Corp law, but there are certified B Corps there, will give preferential treatment from the city to B Corps that want to do business with the city. So I think over time you're going to see lots of other interesting benefits that will accrue from this. So I imagine, please hold your questions. I'll just move into kind of my next talk, because we'd probably take up the whole time with questions, but I'm sure I raised some. So Les didn't like the name of my talk because he didn't use it. It's the idea of conscious choices daily, creating balance on the path to prosperity. And so if something I want you to participate a little bit. If everyone would sit up straight, put both feet on the floor, hands on your knees. Now, just close your eyes for a moment. Just a moment. Okay, you can open your eyes. Did anyone have any thoughts? I'm sure you all did. Psychologists tell us that we have, on average, 60,000 thoughts a day. If you kind of do the math, which I did, that comes out to about 40 thoughts a minute. Now, that's why I'm up here talking, or Les was up here talking, and someone's thinking about, am I going to have Chinese food for lunch? Am I going to have, or you're thinking, there's all kinds of thoughts you can be thinking. What am I going to do when I get back to the office? But you're not being present as someone's up here talking. Have you ever found yourself, you sit down to read a paragraph, and you start reading it, and it makes you think of something, so you go off on a tangent, you come back, you reread the paragraph, another thought comes, you find yourself rereading that same paragraph 2 or 3 times. What we're talking about is how to be present in your life and showing up in a present way. And many of us struggle with this. You know, being an entrepreneurial founder, a solopreneur, an intrapreneur. I keep driving Les crazy because I want to walk and he wants me to stay here. But we're all on a hero's journey, which is classic. Les had 2 great things in his slide. One was a quote from Joseph Campbell, which who is the real the person who discusses a hero's journey. So we're all on this hero's journey. But what's interesting is if you think you're going to get there focusing strictly on discussions around widgets or cash flow or what the marketing plan is going to be, I think you're mistaken. Success, in my observation from having been around a lot of very, very successful CEOs, that not that widgets and what you've invented or your product or service or all of those things aren't important. That's not my point. But my point is that your inner growth and how you show up and are present in your business life will have a huge impact on your success. So what do I mean by sort of being present? Well, first of all, it's be in your body. And what do I mean by that? If you're in your head and you're spinning off somewhere and you're thinking and you're off in some other place, you are not being present in your body. So, you know, how do you bring yourself back? Just take a deep breath. Everyone, take a breath. And just come back. It's very simple. It's very gentle. But it's an ongoing process. This is, you know, there's no quick fixes here. At the end of the talk, I'm not going to give you a magic bullet. But it's just gently come back to where you are. Let me give some examples, some very real-life examples of how you might apply this or think about this in your business life. You're out doing investment presentation, sales pitch, however you want to think about it. You sit down with your prospect, you do your thing. At the end, he says no. Well, you're so busy, you have all of these emotions well up into you. You go, how am I going to cover my mortgage? What's happening? You're spinning off in a million different places, and you miss the fact that he says no until we install, you know, the converter box, then we might be interested. And you miss that, so you can't respond, oh, my best friend's having a special on converter boxes. Let me hook that up for you. Then I'll come back to you and you know, we'll close the sale then. But you missed it because when he said no, he or she, that you spun off somewhere else. How about in a staff meeting? When someone challenges you, you know, to a very, in a very confrontational way. My friend David here holds up his hands and goes, Ajax, everything you said is a bunch of BS. You know, how do you react to that? You know, do you instantly well up and become defensive? Or do you take a breath? Do you center yourself calmly? And are you able to react to what he said and say, okay, you know, let's deal with this in an appropriate manner? What's interesting is if you Google cash flow, just the term cash flow, you'll come up with well over 1 million responses, you know, everything on how to deal with it, all sorts of things. What Google isn't going to help you with is if your cash flow is not positive and you're having to face the idea that maybe the kids aren't going to go to college or your wife's going to divorce you because, you know, the bills aren't being paid. You know, those are the issues that we're talking about that are part of most any founder's life. So how do you stay present? How do you show up in those challenging times that allows you to kind of move through it in a present way. You know, one of the things that's interesting is I'm guessing, and if anyone disagrees with me, this would be a time to hold up your hand, that any of you that have children would not suggest to your children that because they happen to be a really good basketball player, don't worry about your grades, feel free to skip classes, you're going to be a pro player, we're going to put all your cards into that hand, you know. Anyone tell their children that? Think that's a good idea? Probably not. Okay, fine. Rhetorical question. But what's interesting is when we look at business people who spend their entire focus on their company, they ignore their family. I mean, divorce rates are out of hand. They ignore their health. And statistically, they're not ever going to get the big exit. I mean, your chances of doing the big exit, going public, selling to a big company, are about the same as, you know, becoming a pro ball player. Now, I'm not suggesting big exits are a bad thing. Please don't anywhere take that. But my point is, show up in your life in a present way and balance it and live it for the long term. One of the things that was really big around the new year was all this research done interviewing elderly folks, you know, essentially on their deathbed. Not a single one of them suggested they spend more time, you know, if they had to live their life over, they'd want to spend more time at the office. Now, so back to Les's comments about passion. So show up in your life. And live it in kind of a very healthy way. And what's interesting, you don't hear this much in business settings because it's all about, oh, work really hard, be a workaholic, you know, get the big exit. Well, I'm kind of suggesting the other. Set yourself up so that you can have a long-term successful career, but it's going to work for you over time. And I think a lot of us don't really think about that. So no quick fixes, just the concept of, if you, in my opinion, if you show up and are present in your life, center yourself, take a breath, that lots of good things will come to you that you're not experiencing at the moment. Thank you. And I'd be thrilled to take questions because in this brief bit of time, I'm sure that I created more questions than I answered.
Let's limit it to about a half a dozen questions for now, and then you'll be around after the presentation as well.
Sure.
Anybody have any questions?
Either
Comments?
B Corp or the conscious choices. Patty.
If I'm an entrepreneur and maybe I know a little bit about B Corps but not a lot about B Corps, and I'm trying to decide, will choosing to be a B Corp benefit me? What are the benefits to an entrepreneur of choosing to go in that direction? And are there companies that should go in that direction and companies that should not go in that direction?
I don't know that there's any that shouldn't. I think it's unlikely that too many companies, existing companies, will transition. A few will. I certainly did, but I don't think a lot will. The benefits, at this stage, it's a lot of mavericks, people who believe in this in the long term. Like, I think 5 years from now, 10 years from now, being able to say I was a founding certified B Corp by B Lab, I was one of the first 13 in New York, that's going to have deep meaning going forward in the years into the future. And I'm really excited about that. But I'll give a real life example. I'm good friends with the head of sustainability for Aspen Ski Corp. Aspen Ski Corp, $100 million company, 3 ski areas, multiple hotels, other properties, owned by private equity, so very bottom line oriented. They, in their heart and soul, believe that if we don't turn around climate change, that their industry will evaporate. It'll be gone. And they're putting a lot of money into that because they believe that in their heart and soul. When I suggested that and introduced them to B Corp, they went through a whole process. And for them, at $100 million, their fee to be a B Corp annually is about $25,000. And the CEO said to my friend Auden, who reports to him, is there anything on that they're doing that we're not doing? And he said, no. He said, okay, let's spend that 25 grand somewhere else because the brand isn't there yet today. It will be, but it's not there today. So there was a CEO who made a hard decision saying, I can spend that 25 grand somewhere else. I think they will come back around at some point in the future as the brand strengthens. So I hope as a story that somewhat illuminates your question, Patty. So you have to decide where you are, I guess, on the ideological curve for now, and eventually it'll start making dollars and cents for folks to do it.
Any other questions?
Hi, Diane.
Hold on. You gotta wait for the mic. Got a whole group of people.
All right.
Space want to hear your question.
I'm curious as to why you gave it the name the B Corporation. Maybe, I always felt disappointed if I didn't get straight A's, and a B was a bummer. So to me, that's kind of a turnoff. Is there rationale behind that?
I had nothing to do with naming it. I am just one of them. I kind of like the idea of, I have one of their shirts on underneath here, and, be the change. So I happen to like it. If you don't like it, I don't know. I don't, it's kind of like S Corp or B Corp. I don't even know what S or B or C, thank you, stands for. So there you go. Yeah. Any other questions?
I was wondering, we talked about the benefit a little bit, but what are the disadvantages of doing it? Are you required to take a certain percentage of your profits towards a benefit? And is it restrictive in any way?
You're not required to do anything with profits. That strictly would be your choice. I personally take 2% of gross revenue kind of thing, but that's strictly my choice. Downside would be that you do have the potential. In other words, every 2 years they go through an audit process. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be audited every 2 years. I think they pick a sampling of the companies. But I have been audited because in my case, it was they came in, we sat for 2 hours, then went to lunch. I'm a pretty simple sort of audit. Now, my friends like at Icestone, which is a very industrial manufacturing company in the Brooklyn Navy Yard, they were there for 3 days. So, there is that downside. You do have to post the results of your, I guess of the, I don't want to say the audit, but I know, like right now, if you go to B Corporation, corporation written out, just the letter B, bcorporation.net is where you can find all this information. And right now, my score on the B survey is there for the public. And so you do have to publish your score, and you have to have a passing score to remain a B Corp, and it does get harder every 2 years, so it's not a flat level playing field. They keep making it more challenging. So if you were to say a downside, that could be it. I think most companies like that. So far, again, a lot of us are very ideological, because it means there's no slackers in the club, so to speak.
We're going to take one more question, and then we're going to move on to the next part, but you're going to hang around.
First of all, thank you for your presentation. Secondly, you mentioned difficult people. I'm the CEO of a corporation, and it never ceases to amaze you how sometimes everybody has their own opinion, and our job is to try to get people's circles to overlap, get them to play nice with each other. But every now and then you'll come across somebody who thinks they know it all or is a very challenging person. So as much as you might say to that, you're not going to change their personality. So what would you do when you say, let's deal with this differently? Pull them aside? I'm sure there's a host of other strategies, but how do you keep them from being that one bad apple that would screw up the others?
I think there's lots of possible answers to that, but the main point of my talk was if they're coming at you in a very uncomfortable way that maybe brings up emotion in you, are you able to center yourself in a mindful way to not pour gas on the situation by reacting angrily and so forth, and that's doesn't preclude maybe they should be fired, they should be counseled, all sorts of other things. But my point was, in the moment, are you coming to them in a very open, authentic, heartfelt way, and then saying to them, you expect them to come back in that same way, and maybe that creates a healthy point of dialogue where you can both at least hear one another. I don't know whether you're going to agree or not, and maybe you won't. But I think being present in emotionally charged situations really can help diffuse the charge, if you will, and bring it back down to where you can have human conversations. And I think at the end of the day, business is about we're all human. And if we don't engage with one another in that way, we are less effective.
Good job.